An Arizona woman who admitted to poisoning her husband's coffee with bleach gets a slap on the wrist and avoids jail time. 40-year-old Melody Johnson was initially charged with attempted first-degree murder, but last month pleaded guilty to 2 counts of poisoning food or drink. Under her agreement, Johnson pleaded to the lesser crime, and the attempted murder charge was dismissed in return. The case unfolded last year when Tucson police said Johnson had been poisoning her husband's coffee since he was stationed at an Air Force base in Germany in March of 2023. The couple was in the process of getting a divorce, and the victim believed he was being poisoned so Johnson could collect his death benefits. Johnson's husband caught on to the scheme after 2 or 3 weeks of his coffee tasting bad, so he took the investigation into his own hands. The airman reportedly purchased pool chemical testing strips, and the coffee pot water turned up positive for high levels of chlorine, even though the faucet water was normal. Johnson's husband would later tell investigators she knew that he would prep his coffee at night, so in the morning he just needed to turn on the machine to make his daily brew. According to reports, Johnson's husband even went so far as pretending to drink the cup of joe and waited until they were no longer stationed in Germany to report the incidents to authorities. Johnson herself was later caught red-handed by her husband, as hidden camera footage shows her trying to poison her husband by pouring bleach into his coffee maker. The couple then relocated to an Air Force base in Tucson, where Johnson's husband brought the video evidence to authorities, and she was later arrested. Fast forward to this year, Johnson would strike a plea deal with prosecutors. Initially, she faced a maximum of 2 years in prison for each count. However, the judge seemingly gave her a slap on the wrist, sentencing her to probation. According to reports at sentencing, Johnson's attorney told the courts her client suffered from anxiety and depression, even alluding to a toxic marriage and claiming her husband was abusive toward her.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is certainly a strange case, at least the way, it began. You're a very serious charge of attempted murder. You take a look at, the facts of this case and the fact that there's admissions that the defendant admitted to what she did. And then you end up with a probationary sentence. Now, of course, I believe she spent a year in jail pending this case. So she never made bond. So essentially she's getting credit for that time that she's served already. But, she's walking out the door at the time of sentencing because, she's already served the entire length of her incarceration, and she'll now just be under supervision.
I spoke with criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Matt Mangino, who explains there are several factors judges weigh into when it comes to sentencing.
Well, I mean, there's so many factors that go into sentencing. So when we talk about sentences, we don't talk about them necessarily in a vacuum. Well, you did this and this is what you get. So there's factors like her mental health. Now, having mental health problems doesn't negate your responsibility for what you did, but it mitigates it. So, a mental illness could mitigate a sentence, which might otherwise be lengthier. Maybe it's in everybody's best interest that she's released and she has an opportunity to participate in mental health counseling and other things that might not have been available to her in prison. I mean, putting bleach in somebody's coffee certainly indicates your premeditation to want to harm or even kill that person because, ingesting bleach can certainly be lethal. And, so that's an important aspect. But, when I looked at this, I thought, well, you're putting bleach in coffee. I mean, that should be detectable just by the odor of the coffee. This isn't the kind of crime where she necessarily went out and got some, toxin that you couldn't smell and you couldn't taste, and put that in his coffee. This whole diabolical plan, of killing somebody without them knowing that they're even being poisoned. Here, it seems like sort of a lackluster effort, at killing somebody, or just that you really didn't think it through, and maybe you're acting because of something that occurred recently, or maybe you're acting because of this mental defect that you have. So while I think you're exactly right that it shows an intent to kill, On the other hand, it shows just how sort of ill prepared she was to carry out what she wanted to do.
We need to take a really quick break from this shocking story. If you know us at Law and Crime, you know Morgan and Morgan is a proud sponsor of ours. And as viewers, sometimes our videos show the world isn't always safe. So if you're ever hurt, it can be confusing and scary, especially if you don't know where to turn. But we've got a little solution for you because Morgan and Morgan, America's largest injury law firm, can help. Most of us, including myself, always have our phones on us. And with just one click, you can submit a claim and your injury could be worth millions. And the world is moving so fast, we can find ourselves so busy, but it only takes a few minutes to see if you have a case. Plus, if you're injured, you never want to feel alone. Fighting big companies takes a big law firm. So with America's largest injury law firm, they'll be ready to take on insurance companies of every size. And Morgan doesn't settle for lowball offers. So if you're injured, you can start by easily submitting a claim at www.forthepeople.com/LC News or by dialing pound law, that's pound 529 on your phone. Now back to the video. In addition to those factors, another factor the judge reportedly weighed into was Johnson's husband's plea not to send her to prison.
Well, I mean, that's pretty magnanimous of him who was the target of her poisoning. Ultimately, she wanted to kill him, but he's been able to step back under the circumstances and say, well, I don't think that that's necessarily, that prison is necessarily the best thing for her, that she could benefit from mental health treatment. And ultimately, if someone can get into a mental health program, or if it's an issue of substance abuse or things like that, if you can get the help that you need, then the whole community benefits by that, because that's the likelihood that you're not going to recidivate. And I think that's what's the most important thing here. Of course, there's sort of this idea in sentencing of just desserts, that you get what you got to be punished for what you did. But that's only one prong of the whole sentencing scheme in this country. And the other prong, among others, is that you are rehabilitated and that you don't harm people in the future. It's interesting that you would go to that level to prove that somebody's trying to kill you, and then want to be merciful once they're arrested and prosecuted. It's interesting. It's almost as if, and again, I'm just guessing based on the news reports that we've read, that he knew what was up, and right at the get-go, and figured, well, you know what, let me find something to support this, because nobody's going to believe that my wife is putting bleach in my coffee and I can smell it and I'm not drinking it. So I'm going to set up this elaborate surveillance process so that, people will believe me when I tell them. And so I think, maybe right at the outset, even though he knew she was trying to poison him, he also knew that it was really kind of an unsophisticated effort at it. And, just wanted to show people he wasn't crazy for bringing the issue up.
So will Johnson's seemingly light sentence send a message to other potential perpetrators that they may also get a slap on the wrist? Mangino says not necessarily.
Well, that's important. And we talked a moment ago about some of the other components of sentencing, just desserts, getting what you deserve for what you did. And there's also the component of sentencing that is just as important, and that is deterrence. Do penalties deter crimes? Does a harsher sentence in a case like this deter future efforts to try to, kill your husband with poison? So that's the whole idea of sentencing. It has all these components. Another component is incapacitation. Put this person in jail and she's incapacitated. She can't harm anybody else while she's in prison. The issue is fairly working all those components into an individual case. And the only way you can do that is it has to be sort of fact specific. You have to look at the overall situation in a case. Now, a lot of people don't like that. And a lot of legislators and lawmakers don't like that, and they put limits on judges' discretion. And we have sentence guidelines and other things like that that sort of control that. But, I think in order to have an effective and an efficient sentence that works both for society and the individual and the victims, you have to consider all of those components.
Melody Johnson was sentenced to 3 years probation, and her sentence includes mental health treatment. Along with the 3 years of probation, the judge ordered her not to have contact with her husband unless it pertains to their divorce proceedings. Reporting for Law and Crime, I'm Elizabeth Millner.